tó ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ bẹ́yẹn gbogbo màálù tí gba gíláàsì sí mi. Well, you are welcome back to the class from your mid-semester break. The last time we were trying to introduce you to what we mean by critical thinking. So there we have learned about what critical thinking is, what we can benefit from critical thinking, as well as some limitations that we may suffer, that is, that may inhibit our form of critical thinking, some impediments that may stand on the way of critical thinking. So we have learned about all of those. And for your information, the manual is ready at the department. I think your class reps must have been organizing with you on how you will book for and get your copies, so that you don't rely on backdoor handout that you are buying from those people handout in the basket, because it is the one for the department that the department will base its lecture on, and it is there that you are going to answer your assignment questions, and it is there that your exam will be based. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. So what we want to look at today is the relationship between philosophy and language, and what philosophy can help us to understand in the area of language. That is, when we are talking about language, we are talking about language as a means of communicating important and unimportant messages among human beings and even animals. Without language, there will be no communication. So even animals, they do have their own language. And that's why we have verbal language, we have a non-verbal language. So we have the verbal language, which are by means of which we communicate messages and ideas through words. It can come through our mouth, and it can come by way of putting ideas on papers, computers, and we have a written form of language, which can be in terms of putting some signs on papers or computers in a way that we communicate certain messages among those who are conversant with the various combinations of the signs. Then we have what we call non-verbal, which is the opposite of verbal, and that is the one that we drew through body language, facial contact, facial expressions, gesture, posture, and such others. And we have the one that we call sign language. So by sign language, we mean those that are natural visual language with special grammars, using hands, shapes, gestures, as well as facial expressions instead of sound. And one of the major benefits of sign language is that it serves as a major mode of communication for those who are deaf and dumb. You must have seen those who are deaf and dumb. You must have seen them communicating. You will be surprised if you are not trained in sign language, when they put their hands together in different forms, the other person understands. Coming from the fact that language is an instrument or tool for communication, and where communication will involve the encoder and the decoder. The encoder will be the person that is sending the message, where the decoder will be the one that is interpreting the message. So when you are talking to someone, you are the one encoding. Or when you are writing messages to someone, you are the one encoding. You are the one putting codes together. The person that is reading you or the person that is listening to you is the one that is decoding, is interpreting those codes that you have put together. So when we are talking about language, the way we have just gone through now, we can have verbal language, as already explained. We can have written language. We can have non-verbal language, and we can have sign language. All of them, they combine together to serve as language, as a tool or instrument of communicating ideas or messages among individuals, be they human beings or animals. Remember that we are also animals. It's just that we are higher animals. Many of you don't want to be regarded as animals, even when you are, even when I am. It's just we are higher animals. Now, when we are talking about language, language will be important as tools of communication by way of words, clauses, and sentences. You know, the way you will put ideas together to communicate with fellow human beings or fellow animals will be to have some words which you will put together, which can form some clauses if you like, and some clauses put together, they can form what we can call a sentence. Okay? So when we say sentence is grammatically self-contained unit of language that expresses a complete thought. So if you have a sentence that is not expressing a complete thought, we call that one incomplete sentence or hanging sentence. So a sentence, to be properly so called, must be such that is a grammatically self-contained unit of language that expresses a complete thought. And we must know that sentences are made of words. And we can have clauses, okay? And some clauses can be independent. Some of them may be subordinate. You may have two clauses put together before they can form a sentence. That would be a dependent or subordinate clause. And where you have a clause that is independent, that means it can stand on its own, such as I love ice cream. I love ice cream will be a clause, but if you want to form a sentence, it can be I love ice cream because it is delicious. You know, ice cream is delicious. That will be a clause. I love ice cream is also a clause. But because it is delicious will be a dependent clause. If you say because it is delicious, people will not understand you. But if you say I love ice cream, people will understand you. I love ice cream will be an independent clause. But when you now, because it is delicious, that one is subordinate. Something must be added to it. So we can now have two clauses to make a sentence. When we say, I love ice cream, why? Because it is delicious. Okay? So That's how we form sentences. And sentences, like we have said, a sentence is a grammatically self-contained unit of language that expresses a complete thought. Now, forms of sentences. We can have simple sentences. We can have complex sentences. A simple sentence is a sentence that is just expressing an idea. But you can have more than one sentences expressing different ideas joined together. That will give you what we call complex sentence. Okay, so example of simple sentence can be the baby cried. Okay, the baby cried. That would be a simple sentence. It's just expressing a single idea. John wants to go home. That's a simple sentence because it is just expressing a single idea. But when you want to have a complex sentence, you can say the baby cried when he was hungry. So there you have more than one. The baby cried and the baby was hungry. So you are adding more than one together. You are now having a complex sentence. The baby cried when he was hungry. Then John wants to go home because he is tired. So John wants to go home is a sentence. John is tired is another sentence. So when you now say John wants to go home because he is tired, you have joined two sentences together. And that will give you what we can call a complex sentence. Now, in philosophy, like we learned last semester, we said there's philosophy of all disciplines because we agree that philosophy is a scientia matrix. You still remember that? It's the mother of all sciences. So all disciplines broke away from philosophy. And so linguistics, which is the study of language, is also one of the areas that broke away from philosophy. So linguistics deals with languages, but it was originally a child of philosophy. And so, like we agreed last semester, we have philosophy of law, we have philosophy of mathematics, we have philosophy of computer, artificial intelligence, we have philosophy of journalism, of biology, and the one that is relevant here is what we can call philosophy of language. So when we are dealing with the question of language, what it means, its uses, its forms, what exactly the area of philosophy in which we are dealing with that can be called the area of philosophy of language. Remember, we told you last semester that critical thinking can also be given another name as informal logic. Okay, so here we are dealing with questions of language, and that will fall in the area of logic and the area of philosophy of language. By way of introducing you to this area of study, which is philosophy of language, we can say that philosophy of language is a branch of philosophy that studies the nature, origins, use, and limits of language. Again, philosophy of language is a branch of philosophy that studies the nature, origins, use, and limits of language. So philosophy of language explores questions, okay, as a branch of philosophy. Philosophy of language explores questions such as the nature of meaning, language use. It explores questions such as the nature of meaning, language use, language cognition. You know, cognition is about knowing. That's why you say you cognize. When you meet somebody for the first time, you cognize that person. Another time, when you meet that person that you have cognized before, you now recognize that person. That's why you get the word recognize. You are recognizing. So, philosophy of language as a branch of philosophy explores questions such as the nature of meaning, language use, language cognition, and the relationship between language and reality. Between language and reality. It also examines the syntactic SYNTACIC, syntactic, semantic, and pragmatic properties, of linguistic expressions and their context. Let me take it again. It also examines the syntactic, as already spelled, semantic, and pragmatic properties of linguistic expressions and their context. By syntactic, we are talking about syntax, SYNTAX, syntax. So we are talking about syntactic rules. Okay, when we talk about syntax, we are talking about rules guiding how we put words together to form clauses and sentences. Syntax is the branch of language study that concerns itself with the rules governing how we put words together to form sentences and clauses. We have already understood what we meant by sentence and clause at the beginning. We have explained that. Semantic is talking about the rules of meaning of words, clauses, and sentences. Semantics is talking about rules governing meaning of words, clauses, and sentences. And when we talk about the pragmatic, we are talking about the uses of language, the rules guiding our uses of language. That's the one that is talking about pragmatic. So if we take it together now, I can repeat that sentence by saying that philosophy of language also examines the syntactic, semantic, and pragmatic properties of linguistic expressions and their contexts. That is, the conditions under which we use language. Context. The context under which we use language. Their context. Philosophers of language inquire into the nature of meaning. Philosophers of language inquire into the nature of meaning and seek to explain and seek to explain what it means to mean something. Philosophers of language inquire into the nature of meaning and seek to explain what it means to mean something. What it means to mean something. They also, that is the philosophers of language, would also like to understand what speakers and listeners do with language. Philosophers of language would also like to understand what speakers and listeners do with language in communication. Remember the other time we used the word encoder and decoder. The speaker is the encoder and the listener is the decoder. So philosophers of language would like to understand what speakers and listeners do with language in communication and how it is used socially and how it is used socially and how it is used socially. They would also like to know how language relates to the minds. They would also like to know how language relates to the minds of both the speaker and the interpreter or listener. They would also like to know how language relates to the minds of both the speaker and the interpreter or listener. They are also interested. They are also interested in investigating. They are also interested in investigating how language and meaning relate to truth and the world. They are also interested in investigating how language and the meaning relate to truth and the world. So in doing all of this for a 100 level, so now we have understood what philosophy of language is. We have understood what it is interested in. We have understood what language is. And we have understood the point that when we are talking about language forms, we can have verbal language, written language, non-verbal language, and also sign language. And we have also tried to understand what a sentence is and what a clause is. We have also tried to understand that sentences can be simple and it can also be complex. Okay? Now, having understood this, the other aspect is to look at when we are talking about, since we have said that we cannot talk of language without talking of words, without talking of clauses and sentences. Those are the elements that will make up any language form. And we have tried to understand them in some of these different ways. The other one is that even at our O level, during our O level, okay, we have what we can call classifications of sentences. Since sentence, words, clauses, they are very important to language as a tool or instrument for communication. We know that at our O level, we must have learned about what they call declarative sentence. When you are classifying sentences, that's what we call declarative sentence. A declarative from the, as a student of philosophy, even without explaining it, when we say declarative form of sentences, we are discussing forms of sentences now, the classification of forms of sentences. When we say declarative, declarative is from declare, isn't that? So when we say declarative form of sentence, that must be a sentence that is expressing a complete idea, and the complete idea that it is expressing is such that it is declaring an idea. It is trying to give us a kind of information. It is declaring something. Okay? It is declaring something. So a declarative form of sentences simply relay information. It makes statements or it expresses assertions. So a declarative sentence from the name is a sentence that declares information, that declares ideas, that relays information, that makes statements or express assertions. For instance, a declarative sentence will say, water boils at 100 degrees centigrade. Water boils at 100 degrees centigrade. That's a declarative sentence. OAU students resumed on the 19th of May 2026 from their mid-semester break. That would be a declarative sentence. It is relaying information. Students and teachers were abducted in a CNN near Ogbomoso, Nigeria, last week. That would be a declarative sentence. Some serious students are attending teleconference lectures now, while the unserious ones have not resumed to even listen to anything. That would be a declarative sentence. Serious students will work hard. That's it. Anyway, so declarative sentence is declaring an idea, it is relaying information, it is making statements, it is expressing assertions. Then we have interrogative forms of sentence. Don't interrogate me. And when you say don't interrogate me, go straight to the point. Interrogation is about questioning. So we have forms of sentences that raises questions. They raise questions. And when they raise questions, you must know that if they raise questions, they must be expecting something like an answer. So interrogative form of sentence comes in form of question. They come in forms of, they interrogate, they question. What is your name? When is philosophy 102 class? What form of platform are we using for philosophy 102? Those are interrogative sentences. They are raising questions. Are you already in the class? That's an interrogative sentence. Okay? So such sentences stimulate deeper thinking and they generate communication. Okay? Their aim may be to clarify information. And interrogative sentences could begin with what, why, when, where, how, who, and so on. Okay, so they can start or begin with what, why, when, where, how, who, and so on. And I've given you some examples of interrogative sentences. When you buy your manual, you will read further examples. Okay, your manual will do justice to, but it's better for you. You know why we are explaining. Some explanation may be deeper than what you have directly in the manual. That's why students who want to score A, who wants to be good students, they will attend the classes and they will join what they are able to get from the classes. They will join it to what they have in the manual. That's the best way. But if you become lazy students who rely on manual alone, only God will help you. But God will not leave lazy, will not leave hardworking students and go and be helping lazy ones. At least so I think. Okay, now we have discussed the declarative form of sentence, interrogative form of sentence. We also have the one that we call imperative sentence. Imperative. Okay? That is the one that issues direct command. Imperative sentence or sentences issue direct commands. Okay? Come here. Sit down. Listen to this lecture. Don't miss classes. Be serious. Don't be a truant. Okay? Those ones are imperative. The imperative form of sentence issues direct command or warning. Read the instruction carefully before you start exam. That will be imperative. And we have the other one, which we call exclamatory sentence. Exclamatory sentence. You know, exclamatory sentences, they are sentences that express excitement, surprise, okay, or joy or happiness. Some people will say, oh my gosh. Some people will say, oh God. Some people will say, fantastic. Okay. Some people will say, what a surprise. So we have, so exclamatory sentences, they exclaim. They exclaim. And by exclaiming, you are expressing your excitement, your anger, your surprise, your joy, your happiness. Okay. So with that, we have discussed the forms of sentences. Okay. That one, many of us must have learned, some of us must have learned about in our O-level, in our O-level schools. But we just have to, we have to remind you, we have to remind you of this. Now, when, after talking about forms of sentence, after talking about forms of sentence, we can now begin to talk of, remember that at the beginning, we said language is a tool, instrument, or means of communicating among human beings. Language is the one through which we communicate ideas, messages among individuals. Now we have discussed forms, and we have discussed four of them: declarative, interrogative, imperative, and exclamative forms of sentence. From these forms of language, we can then graduate to the level of uses of language. That is, it should be our interest to begin to talk about functions of language. That is, if language is a tool for communicating, if it is a tool for communicating, if it is a tool for passing information and messages, then we need to know how language does this. And in knowing how language does this, it should be of interest to us to know. We have learned about forms of sentences, and we say sentences are the elements of language. So we cannot communicate without using sentences. And we have discussed forms or classifications of sentences. Now, having discussed that, it should be of interest to us to now say, okay, if language through the use of sentences is an instrument of communication, so having learned about classifications of forms of sentences, since sentences are the elements or particles of language through which communication is being done, and we have learned forms or classifications of sentences. The question now is, how is it that language does this work or perform this function of serving as an instrument of communication? So we have what we can call informative use of language. We have what we can call informative use of language. And by that, once you hear informative use of language, something must occur to you. Something must occur to you that we are talking about using language to convey information. Remember that the other time we were talking about the declarative form of language. It declares ideas, it relays information. So, informative use of language is the process through which we use language through sentences to make factual claims. To make factual claims. We use sentences to make factual claims. We use it. So we use language in the informative way when we make factual claims. And the using language informatively means using language to pass information about the world, to make factual claims about the world, such as it is raining now. It is raining now is an informative use of language. Water boils at 100 degrees centigrade is an informative use of language. Senator Bola Tinubu is the president of Nigeria is an informative use of language. So when we are talking about informative use of language, we can also call informative use of language the cognitive use of language. So we can say informative or cognitive use of language. Cognition is about knowledge. Cognition is about knowledge. So when we use language to pass ideas to people, to give them information about the world, when you are giving people information about the world, you are passing knowledge across to them. So informative use of language is the use of language or sentence to communicate information. Informative use of language, informative or cognitive use of language is using language to communicate information. And when you are using language to communicate information, it can be by affirming or denying propositions. It can be by affirming or denying propositions. When you are affirming, you are stating that that proposition is true. When you are denying, you are saying that the proposition is not true. So informative or cognitive use of language is the use of language to communicate information. And communicating information can be by affirming or denying propositions. Propositions are sentences that are proposing ideas or informations. So language used to affirm or deny propositions. Language used to affirm or deny propositions or to present arguments is said to be serving the informative or cognitive function. A language that is used to affirm or deny propositions or to present arguments is said to be serving the informative or cognitive function. Here, we use the word information to include misinformation. Here, we use the word information to include misinformation. When you say, when it is raining, and you tell us that it is not raining, you are communicating information, but it's a misinformation. Because the information you are giving us is not stating the fact about the world. So that will be misinformation. But a misinformation is also a form of information. Okay, so here we use the word information to include misinformation, false, as well as true propositions. False as well as true propositions. If it is raining, okay, we are holding a class now. If you say Philosophy 102 class is holding through teleconference now, that will be a proposition. And that will be a true proposition. And me saying that will be that I'm communicating a form of information that is true. But if I say Philosophy 102 class is holding now at the sports center, I will still be communicating information, but that will be a false information. So that will be a false proposition. Okay, and it will be like a misinformation. So when we are talking about information, it may include misinformation. It may include false as well as true propositions. I say false, F-A-L-S-E. Before some of you will go and write F-O-R-C-E, and you will fail the question that is asking about it. I say false, F-A-L-S-E. So false as well as true propositions, correct and incorrect arguments. So when we are talking about language, the informative use of language or cognitive use of language as a way of communicating information, we are saying this information can include misinformation. It can include false as well as true propositions. It can include correct and incorrect arguments. So the informative or cognitive use of language is used to describe the world. It's used to describe the world and to reason about it. It is used to describe the world and to reason about it. To reason about it. And whether the alleged facts that we are communicating, whether they are important or unimportant, general or particular, does not matter. What matters to informative use of language is that we are using it to describe the world. We are using it to state facts. We are using it to make factual claims. We are using it to make factual claims. For instance, when we say there are 9 planets, that will be an informative use of language. Okay, so an informative use of language is also alias or AKA cognitive use of language, because the information and the factual claims that we are making through the informative use of language is adding to our knowledge about the world. It's adding to our knowledge about the world. And so when we are talking about declarative use of informative use of language, we have declarative form, but we have informative use. Don't confuse them. So the information that we are communicating may be true, it may be false. But the important thing is that we are using language through sentences to make factual claims, to relay information. Another use of language is the one that is called expressive use of language. Listen to this code: 8K. Listen and make use of it. Otherwise, you are absent from this class. And it will count against you if you don't attend classes. So again, ZEH8K in capital letters. ZEH8K. You better input it now before you are declared absent from this class. So that again is an example of informative use of language. Okay, this one is not false, it's true, because when you insert it, it will make you to be present. God bless your soul if you have any. Okay, so another use of language is the one that we call expressive function or expressive use of language. Expressive use of language. Okay? Unlike the informative use of language, which we use to describe the world, which we used to make factual claims, which we use to relay factual informations that may be true or false. Expressive use of language is not making any factual claim. It's not making any factual claim. So it cannot be assessed on the basis of falsity or truth. So we cannot talk about whether it is true or it is false. But in the informative use of language, we can still talk about whether it is true or whether it is false. But under expressive use of language, you are not making any factual claim. You are not describing any word. You are not relaying any factual information. Under the expressive use of language, another name for expressive use of language is emotive use of language. Emotive. You know emotion. When we say you are only displaying your emotion, don't go and write emotion of pain. Though. The one we are talking about is emotion. Eh? When we say you are only expressing your emotion, when you are angry and you are crying and you are begging, I have to pass this course. You know, I'm the first child of my family. So we say you are just expressing your emotion. That's not to what you wrote in the exam. So emotive, expressive use of language can also be called emotive use of language. It does not describe the world. It does not make any factual claim. All it does is it expresses your feelings. It expresses your emotions. Okay? It expresses your feeling. It expresses your emotion, or it expresses your attitude. Okay? So, the expressive function of language, some people call it emotive use of language or emotive function. Some other people also call it aesthetic function of language. Aesthetic. 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 Aesthetic function. So the expressive function can also be called emotive function. It can also be called aesthetic function. Aesthetics is the branch of philosophy that deals with questions of beauty, okay, whether something is beautiful or ugly and things like that, okay, or whether it is sonorous, not sonorous. If you sing and we say, only you go buy the record, we are operating at the level of aesthetics. When you sing and say, all of us go buy, this is not a good one, we are operating in the area of aesthetic. So we are expressing our feeling. You know, the one that I say is sonorous may not be sonorous to another person. A wife that is beautiful to the husband may be ugly to a neighbor, you know. So that's the area of aesthetic. So expressive use of language is the use of language to express feeling, emotion, or attitude of the speaker. Okay? It is used to express the feeling, emotion, or attitude of the speaker. Turn the other way around. The expressive or emotive or aesthetic function of language can be the use of language to arouse or evoke feelings or emotions or ideas in the reader or the listener. So when we are talking about the expressive use of language, that is when we use language to express our feelings, to express our emotions, to express our attitudes. But when you are expressing your emotions, your attitudes, and your feelings, you are expecting that your expression of feeling, emotion, and attitude is expected to arouse in the person that is listening to you or reading you a similar feeling, emotion, or attitude. So the expressive use of language is the use of language to express feelings, emotions, and attitudes, and to arouse or evoke similar feeling or emotion in the reader or the listener. Language serves the expressive function. Language serves the expressive function when it is used. Language serves the expressive function when it is used to vent, V-E-N-T, to vent or to arouse feelings or emotions. Examples of expressive use of language can be found in the works of art, poetry, painting, drawings. For instance, we express sorrow by saying, "That is too bad." We express sorrow by saying, "That's too bad." When I say that, that means I'm also expecting that it arouses in you the same feeling. We can say, "What a pity." And we can express enthusiasm by exclaiming, "Terrific," or "fantastic." And we can express intense passion. Okay? Intense passions may be expressed by lovers, murmuring private words of endearment. Say, "You are the only tea, you are the only sugar in my tea." Okay? The only Coca-Cola in my bottle. So you can express intense passion by words of endearment. A worshiper's feeling of awe, AWE. A worshiper's feeling of awe, AWE, and wonder, feeling of awe and wonder at the vastness and mystery of the universe. A worshiper's feeling of awe and wonder at the vastness and mystery of the universe may be expressed by reciting the Lord's Prayer, or Allahu Akbar, or Paripa. Okay? So, uses of this kind of language, which is expressive use of language, are not intended, the expressive uses of language are not intended to communicate information, are not intended to communicate information, but to express emotions, feelings, or attitudes. They are neither true nor false. They are neither true nor false. When you read a poem will arouse a feeling in you, but the feeling that it aroused in you may not be the one in another person. So, because there's no fact in the world that you are using it, as you go further, you will see that even in ethics, in the question of morality, most of the expressions there are expressive use of language. Okay? So, the last use of language there are so many, but I think the department is trying to save you from some, so they limit it to this three because you are just coming. So the third one is the directive use of language. The directive use of language. This directive use of language can also be called the pragmatic use of language. Directive use of language can also be referred to as pragmatic use of language. As we are discussing this thing, all these AKA that we are adding to them, they are important to anything that is mentioned in the course of this class. We stand on the day of judgment. So that's why it is better you attend classes and you combine it with the manual. Okay, so we have the directive or pragmatic use of language. That is the third use of language that we are going to discuss. When we say directive use of language, which we call pragmatic use of language, it can also be referred to as an instrumental way of using language to influence others in such a way that they will act. Directive, direct, when they direct you to do something, direct. When they say left, right, we are directing you. If you're on parade ground, I will say left, right, and you go and carry right instead of left, or you don't carry anything. You chop blala when you go for NYC. Okay, so directive use of language. We use language, so under the directive use of language or pragmatic use of language or cognitive use of language, we use language in instrumental way by using our utterances to influence others in such a way that they will act. Okay? Now, language serves the directive function. Language serves the directive function when it is intended. Language serves the directive function or pragmatic function or cognitive function when it is intended to cause or prevent an action. Language serves the directive function when it is intended to cause or prevent an open or overt action. The clearest examples are commands and requests. The clearest examples are commands and requests. Some of you will go and say request. When it is request, it is serving as a verb, request as a noun, request as a request. So which means you can use it to request something, but you can use it as a request. And when you are using it as a request, you are using it to request something. The different pronunciations of the same word, we distinguish between the one that is a verb and the one that is a noun. Okay, so language serves the directive function when it is intended to cause or prevent open or overt action. The clearest examples are commands and requests. When a parent tells a child to wash up for dinner, when a parent, for instance, tells a child to wash up for dinner, the intention is not to communicate any information. The intention is not to communicate any information or to express or evoke any particular emotion. Again, when a parent tells a child to wash up for dinner, the intention is not to communicate any information or to express or evoke any particular emotion. The language is intended to get results. The language is intended to get results, to cause action of the indicated kind. The language is intended to get results, to cause action of the indicated kind. Of the indicated kind. So you will see that there we are distinguishing. You will see that when I enter into expressive, I distinguish it from informative. And you will see that this last sentence that I've just uttered, I also try to distinguish this directive use or function of language from informative and expressive. That's why I say that it is not communicating any information. If it is not communicating any factual information, that means it is not like informative. If it is not expressing or evoking any particular emotion, that means it is also not like expressive. That means it is different from the expressive. Okay? So the directive function of language is different from the informative and is different from the expressive. The expressive is either expressing, that is, when it is expressing, that's the person that is doing the talking. When we are talking about evoking, that is when it is arousing in the mind of the hearer, and the directive is not doing any of such. So the language is intended to get results, to cause action of the indicated kind. When a theater goer, that is, for example, when a theater goer, that is the person who goes to theater or cinema houses, when a theater goer says to the ticket seller, "Two, please," the language is again being used directively. When it says "two, please," that means it's directing the seller to give him 2 tickets. "Two, please." The language is being used directively to produce action for the seller to give him 2 tickets. Between commands and requests, remember that we said that directive can be command, can be request. But command and request, they are not the same. So we now want to, so command and request are not the same, but directive function of language can do both. So we now want to say that between commands and requests, the differences may be subtle. Don't go and write shuttle because you are using shuttle from gate now. I didn't say shuttle, I said subtle. S-U-B-T-L-E. Now I dey talk, oh, no be S-H-U-T-T-L-E. Oh. That is the difference between command and request, which directive function of language does. The difference between them is subtle. That is, it's minimal. It's subtle. It's not very open, because almost any command can be converted into a request with suitable changes in the tone of voice, or merely by the addition of the word please. Okay, so command and request, they are the functions that the directive function of language performs, that the directive function of use of language performs. But command is not the same thing as request. It's only that the difference between the two of them is not too well pronounced. However, there's a way. However, like I was saying, there's a way to change command to request, because you may not be able to command somebody who is superior to you. You can't come to my office now and say, give me a book from your shelf. Commanding me, give me a book from your shelf. I will just look at you and continue with what I'm doing. But there's a way that you can change command to request. And some of the ways to change command to request is by using suitable changes in the tone of voice, or by merely adding the word please. If you come to my office and say, please, sir, give me a book from your shelf, that one is a request. You are no longer commanding. But when you come and say, give me a book from your shelf, you are commanding me. But when you say, please, give me a book from your shelf, that's a request. Okay? And that is by adding the word please. But you can also change from command to request through a change in the tone of voice. When you come to my office and say, give me a book from your shelf, that one, it looks like you are requesting. But when you say, give me a book from your shelf, a change in the tone of your voice can convert a command to a request. A question may also be classified as directive discourse when, as ordinarily, it is posed in order to request an answer. A question may also be classified as directive discourse when, as ordinarily, it is posed in order to request an answer. In its nakedly imperative form, directive discourse is neither true nor false. Remember, we say a question which is interrogative sometimes can come as a kind of command. When you say, where are you going? Or when you say, can I have a book from you? You are expecting me to answer. In that way, it may look a little like you are directing, like a directive. Okay? A command, okay, in its nakedly imperative form, directive discourse is neither true nor false. A command such as close the window cannot be either true or false. Close the window. It's just asking you to do something and he expects you to stand up and go and close it. It's causing you to do something. It can cause you to do something and it can prevent you from doing something. Don't leave that place. It's a directive use of language. Don't leave that place. It's a directive use of language. It's preventing you from going. Close the window is directing you to cause the closing of the window to happen. Okay, we have explained that. So a command such as close the window cannot be either true or false in any literal sense. We may disagree about whether a command has been obeyed or disobeyed. We may disagree about whether a command has been obeyed or disobeyed. But we never disagree about whether a command is true or false, because those terms simply do not apply to command. However, that is, even when true or false is not applied to command, we can see command and request have other attributes. They have reasonableness or propriety. A command can be reasonable or unreasonable. And a command may suffer from impropriety. Okay? So it's not all commands that are reasonable. So when there's a command, although we cannot talk about true or false, but we can talk about reasonableness and we can talk about the impropriety of, that is, whether it is something that is morally justified, whether the command is morally justified or it is not morally justified. Armed robber, it was in the newspaper some times ago. Armed robbers entered into a building. They met the mother and the son, and the command, the directive use of language from the armed robbers was that the boy should have an affair with the mother. Otherwise, they will shoot the boy. So it's a command. We cannot talk about true or false. Talk about whether it is reasonable, and we can talk of whether it is morally acceptable or not morally acceptable. However, we may want to say that the examples of informative, expressive, and directive discourses are illuminating and valuable, but they cannot be applied mechanically. They cannot be applied mechanically. Again, the examples of informative, expressive, and directive discourses are illuminating and valuable, but they cannot be applied mechanically, because almost any ordinary communication will probably exhibit to a greater or lesser extent all three uses of language. So now we have discussed what is language, we have discussed what is philosophy of language, and the functions expected of philosophy of language. We have discussed verbal form, written, non-verbal, sign language. We have discussed sentences and clauses as elements of language. We have discussed the classifications of forms of sentences. We say some can be simple, some can be complex. And we have discussed declarative, interrogative, imperative, and exclamatory forms or classifications of sentence. And we came to the uses or functions of language, where we discussed three: informative use, expressive use, directive use. And we have warned that we cannot apply them mechanically. Now, we want to go to, we know what language is, but there are some essential characteristics that depict the nature of language. One is you cannot possess a language unless you acquire it. And we acquire language conventionally. We grow up in the society, we learn a language. That's one form. If you are born into a particular culture, you grow up with the language of that culture. The other one is you can also learn it formally by going to classes. So language needs to be acquired. Language is also dynamic. It is not static. Language changes. In the Old English, when Jesus Christ was saying that man was not for bread alone, that time, bread meant amala, fufu, rice, pounded yam. Food generally meant bread. But gradually, as the language was developing, different names were given to different things. So language is dynamic. The Elizabethan language is different from the current language that we are speaking. If you read Shakespeare, you will see that the language in Shakespeare, that's the language of his time. It's not the same thing as the language that we use now. So language is dynamic. More and more, as we are exposed to the world, as we encounter the world, we learn new things. And those new things that we learn, they also influence changes in our language. So language is dynamic. Language has rules, and it followed structured rules. Okay? You cannot say, I was came. If you say I was came, people will beat you. If you are 100 level human being and you say I was came, you say I was came, people will say, I was came. What type of rules are you following? So to speak language correctly, there are some rules that you have to follow. Yeah, I did came. I did came yesterday. If you say I did came yesterday, some people will beat a hell out of you. But if you still say I did come, people, that means instead of saying I came, you say I did come, people can still understand you. But when you say I did came, okay, or I will went, if you say I will went, so the wrongness in those shows that language has a rule that must be followed. It has syntactical rules, rules guiding how we put words together. It has semantic rules, rules guiding the meaning. It has pragmatic rules, rules guiding how we make use of language. So language is a social tool. There cannot be human society if there is no language. Language may not necessarily mean what comes from our mouth. Among the deaf and dumb, they also have their own language. They communicate. Between the mother fowl and the chickens, they have their language. When hawk is around, the mother hen knows how to tell the little ones that beware, danger day around. Not talk of. Language is unique, creative, complex, and modifiable. Language is based on linguistic and communicative competence. So that's some characteristics about the nature of language. We also have what we can call significance or importance of studying language. Significance or importance of studying language. One of them is that studying language fosters effective communication. Okay? Studying language fosters effective communication. The better your mastery of language, the better for you to communicate among human beings, among your friends. If you have a good mastery of language, you will be able to say exactly what you want to say. And when you are listening, you will understand exactly what is being said to you. So proficiency in multiple languages enables individuals to express their thoughts. If you go to Sabo and you want to buy suya, if apart from your Igbo language or Yoruba language and English language, if you understand a little of Hausa language, the suya they will sell to you may be cheaper than the one that you will buy if you speak English or Yoruba. And if you are in the north, if you are a Yoruba person and you see a Yoruba person selling pepper or selling, and you speak Yoruba, that emotion that, somebody from the old woman may ask you to go with the pepper without collecting money. So language fosters effective communication, and proficiency in multiple languages, that is, in more than one language, enables individuals to express their thoughts, ideas with clarity to different kinds of people. Another importance of studying language is that it enhances cognitive growth, that is, your ability to acquire knowledge. The better your language, the easier it will be for you to develop your ability to know. Because there are a lot of things that you read. If you don't have good mastery of the language in which the ideas are written or they are being said, then there will be a lot of them that you won't understand. So language enhances cognitive growth. I kept on saying cognitive, cognition, knowledge, okay? So by engaging in language literacy, scholars develop their logical thinking capacity, enabling them to approach challenges from different perspectives. Studying of language also aids cultural understanding. When you are learning any language, you are also learning the culture of the speakers of that language. So the more, as many languages as you are able to learn, that means the same number of cultures you must have learned. You cannot learn English language without also directly or indirectly learning the language of the English people. Okay? And so you cannot learn Yoruba. That's why if you learn English language, when you want to talk to your father, it's a you. When you want to talk to your friend, it's also a you. But if you are learning French, you will know that there's difference between one person, two persons, and when you are using the language of respect, okay, to her, that is, you are doing something. If that person is your contemporary, like your age mate, like your friend, you can say to her. But if it's like a father or your lecturer, you are going to say vous êtes, okay? And the same thing, that is exactly in Yoruba. The one in French is like the one in Yoruba. If you say Iwo refers to you. That's your contemporary. But if you meet your lecturer or your daddy and you say Iwo or your uncle, they will knock your head. Ẹ̀yin, whereas ẹ̀yin is a plural form. Just like vous êtes in French is a plural form. But when a language of respect in French, you cannot say tu es to an elderly person. You will say vous êtes as if it's more than one person. It's the same thing in Yoruba. You will say ẹ̀yin, whereas you are referring to one person. You are still saying ẹ̀yin. But if you grow up with English language, everybody will be a you. That's why you have to study well. Because by the time you are in you are in part one now. There are some people writing jam now. They are calling you sister, auntie, sister, auntie. They are using ẹ̀yin for you. Ẹ̀yin, say ẹ ti resume, say ẹ ti padà sí school. If you fail any of the courses and they meet you in part one, then they will learn not to use Yoruba to talk to you. Then they will say you. Because they can't say Ẹ̀yin again, because you are now classmates. They won't be able to say Ẹ̀yin. They say you, I'm talking to you. Because if they say Yoruba, Ẹ̀yin ni mò ń bá sọ̀rọ̀. Okay? So, as you are learning a language, you are also learning the culture of the speakers. So, studying of language aids cultural understanding. By studying different languages, students gain insight to diverse culture, tradition, and perspectives. So, today, what we have learned so far, in addition to what you learned the other time, we have learned about language, we have learned about what is philosophy of language, we have learned about the role that is expected of philosophers of language and the interest of the philosophers of language. And from that, we have learned about what is language, nature of language. We have learned about the nature of language. That is, we learned that language is considered to be one of the tools designed by man to make them function effectively and efficiently due to the power of communication. So, because of this nature of language, language by nature is conceived as a symbolic system composed of sounds, hand gestures, or letters created by social group to facilitate human expression. In fact, it is believed that a world, a dunya, a world without language will be so primitive and backward. In fact, it will not even be possible. The reason is because there will be no social interaction and life will be so solitary, nasty, and short, like the Obesian state of nature. In essence, there can be no any functional human society with language. So these are the things that we have learned, and may the Lord bless his own words. Hmm? Penance.
The coordinator said that because he changed the time of class, so the code will not work this hour.
So Oh, we get him. Watch out.
You're doing this. Yes.
I want to give them food.
You kind of follow me.
Like this, they will hear me.
You can hear it.
Good morning. Hope you are hearing from me. You are welcome back from your holiday. The previous, how can I move? Just scroll down, scroll up. Okay. So, if you can remember, we stopped at energy store in a capacitor, and I used this diagram to explain how the energy is being stored. We all know that if you plot the graph of V against Q, that is the charge store, then we said over a small area where you have the plate, then you can calculate the area under the graph. And if you look at that area under the graph, you can see that you have so many triangles. So an area under the triangle is half base times height. Can you remember the area of a triangle? And that is how we come about the energy store. U is equal to half. You can see base is Q, while the height is the V. That's why we say half base times height, half Q times V, which is the energy store, the charge, times the voltage. And from what our former definition of charge, we've said that charge is CV. So if you substitute Q equals CV, you will see that we have U is equal to half CV squared. Or if you change it in terms of V, if you change it in terms of, you have Q over Z, I mean C, which is the Q over the capacitor. And then by the time you substitute, you are going to have U is equal to Q squared all over 2C. And from there, if you substitute the value, we are talking about plates. If you are talking about plate, we know that the electric field is equal to V all over D. That is the electric field. So from there, you can get V. V is equal to ED. Where E is the distance, E is the electric field charged, and then the D is the charge between the plates. I mean, the distance between the plates. And we have discovered, we have also proved that our C, the capacitance, is given by E, that is dielectric divided the permittivity all over area, I mean times area divided by D. So if you substitute those values, you can now see that you can calculate the energy store. Once you know your electric field and you know the area and the area between the plates and then the distance between the plates. So, but what we are saying, this is not A squared. We know that the volume is cross-sectional area times D times the distance. So from there, you can, once you know the cross-sectional area, you can get it. It's not V squared. Don't remove that too. So if you substituted, you can get the volume. So we are now saying that if I want to calculate the energy stored per volume, since I have AD there, I can change that one to volume. So from there, energy charge per volume will be capital U all over V, because you have AD to be equal to V. So by the time you substitute, you can see that the what you call the charge energy density or energy per unit volume is equal to that small u, which is equal to capital U all over AD, which is same thing as divided. If you take AD away from here, you will have half epsilon naught E squared. So what is the meaning? If I want to calculate the energy stored per unit volume, what I just need is the electric field. Once I can get the electric field, I know that this permittivity, which is epsilon naught, is constant. So once you can get the electric field, then you can get your
what we call the energy density. And you can see from here, the energy density is proportional to the square of the magnitude of the electric field. Once we know the electric field, that's the only thing that we need to know. Or if you don't have the electric field, once you are able to calculate the electric field, then you can just substitute to get your energy density or energy per unit volume. So from here, we need to talk about the dielectric. You know, I told you that dielectric is the more or less insulator, something like that does not conduct. The dielectric is not conducting material in between the plates of a capacitor. You know, the capacitor are separated by two equal plates. So in between them is where you have your dielectric. So if your dielectric is made up of glass or rubber, something that is not or wax or paper, it can be. We have paper capacitor, we have all glass, it can be glass, it can be rubber. So there are so many effects, and one of it is that when a dielectric material is inserted between the plate of a capacitor, the capacitance increases by a factor of a constant, and it is called the dielectric constant. That is the dielectric of the material. So from there, you can calculate your capacitance. Your capacitance will just, if you know that of the capacitance of the dielectric, then you just multiply by K. So, by the way, I want to give you the attendance code for the class. I want you to write it there now, as I will be putting the code. Capital U9, capital W4P. I want you to write it. U9, W4P. That is the code, the first code that you need to know for the class. The second effect is the dielectric constant K has no unit. We must know that. It's a constant. It is the characteristics of the given material. And that is why we say either rubber, glass, or wax, or paper. It can be. Just know that the dielectric. And that will determine the value of the dielectric. The material that you are using determine the value, but it is constant. The third one, permittivity of the free space. You know, when you use epsilon naught, the meaning is that you are talking about free space, like air is an example. Then the permittivity of that material that you are talking about, if it is paper, we can call it the permittivity of epsilon P, paper. If it is rubber, I can say epsilon R, depending on the material. So you can see that constant can be determined is the ratio of the two constants, the permittivity of the material divided by the permittivity of the free space of that material that you are talking about. Free space here, that will give you what we call the relative permittivity. Then it is also important for you to know that you can calculate what we call energy density. And the energy density is proportional to the square of the electric field. Of the electric field, where epsilon is the permittivity of that material. You can see that I didn't put epsilon naught here. It depends on the material. So that material determines the energy density of the dielectric, that the ability of that material to store up energy per unit area. So once you are able to get that, you can calculate your what we call your energy density. So there is also need for you to get what we call electric dipole in an electric field. Electric dipole consists of two charges of equal magnitude but opposite direction. Take, for example, I can have Q plus and Q minus. If I charge the plates, they have the same value but opposite charge. That's what we are saying. It is separated by dielectric, the opposite sign. You know, because you are having two, that's why it's 2A, the separation. So the electric dipole moment of this arrangement is defined by the effector P. So if you want to calculate what we call the dipole between The two pay, we are talking about two plates of equal charge, but in opposite direction, Q minus Q to plus Q along. So for me to get the dipole, it is multiply. You multiply it. Once you know the distance, then you multiply by the charge. That is how to get. Then torque. Torque is a force when you are talking in terms of mechanics. So the same thing, you can calculate the torque of a dipole, and the torque of a dipole is just you multiply the dipole by the electric field. That's just what you do, and that is what you have done here. P times E, where my P is the dipole. We calculate the dipole. So once you are able to get the dipole, you multiply by the electric field, and this will lead us to what we call the potential energy. From your physics, you can get your potential energy, and the potential energy is given by minus. Just multiply is just minus. Don't forget, because we are talking in terms of store up energy. So that's why we are putting that minus. And I think we need to do, let me give you some example, because I don't want a situation where you will have you won't be able to solve. I don't like it. So you have to. So the first example on capacitance that we've talked about, I said a 1 microfarad and a 2 microfarads capacitor are connected in series. Don't forget, when they are in series, you know what series connection is. Across a volt of 1,000 supply, find the charge on each capacitor and their voltage across it. This is very simple. Please don't forget, whenever the capacitance are in series, what do? You find the reciprocals of to get the effective capacitance. What will you do? You find the effect. 1/1 plus 1/2, 1/C equivalent. So you can calculate equivalent. If you do the equivalent, I'm giving you the solution already. If you calculate the 1/C equivalent, will just be 3/2. So my C equivalent will be 2/3. I hope you are getting it. So from there, how do I get the charge? Since I've got my C equivalent, don't forget, we know that the charge on any given capacitor is given by what? CV, the capacitor the capacitance times the voltage across it. So this equivalent will now be equal to what? 2/3 times, don't forget 2/3 times 10⁻², because it's microfarad, times 10⁻⁻⁶ times 1,000 volts. You can see 1,000 volts. That will be the one that you will get. So if you do that correctly, your Q, that is the total charge in that given circuit, will just be 6.67 times 10⁻⁻⁴. That will be the total charge. But I can calculate the charge. Since they are in series, I can calculate the charge, the voltage across each. The voltage across will be, if you call it V1 for voltage V1 across 1 microfarad and V2 across 2 microfarads. So if I want to do that, my V1 will just be equal to Q, because for series capacitance, Q doesn't change. Their charge is the same. So they have equal charge. So it will be Q all over C1. And since I know that Q over C1, and I've calculated Q, my Q is 6.67 times 10⁻⁴ divided by C1. Don't forget, your C1 is what? Your C1 is 1 microfarad. That will be 1 times 10⁻⁶. So if you do that correctly, you are going to have what? 667 volts. That is the PD across 1 microfarad. Then what will now be the CV across 2 microfarad? The same method, V is equal to Q all over C2. Or you can just subtract, since they are just two. Since you know the voltage across 1, which is 667 volts, Then to get the other one will just be 100 minus 667. Or if you do the way we just Q all over C2, then you can get your V2, which is equal to what? 333 volts. That will be 33 volts. So we'll be able to calculate the charges on the charge on, because it's just going to be one, since they are in series, the same charge. But for the capacitor, for us to get the voltage across each, we have gotten the two. The first one across one is equal to 67 volts, and the second one is 333 volts. That is it. The second question, I don't know whether you can attempt that second question. Can you attempt the second question? The second question is the dimension of a plate. Don't forget two parallel plates. We are talking the dimension of a plate of a parallel plate capacitor. This is supposed to be 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter. Please, I want you to correct that. The question is 8 by 8 centimeter. 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter. Or you can just say 8 by 8 means length times breadth. So since they are equal plates, I mean size, so you can just say 64 centimeters squared. But that notwithstanding, 8 by 8, just put 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter. And they are separated by a distance of 2 millimeters. So that's the distance of separation. Calculate the capacitance if the air is between the plates. Calculate also the capacitance if a glass. Can you see? We are using two dielectric. We are talking about air and we are talking about glass. With a constant 5, they say constant dielectric, 5 filled the space between the plates. So if you are able to, first of all, you get the area. Don't forget I said the area between the plates are just 8 times 8 centimeters squared. You can convert it to meter. That will be 64 centimeters squared. And if you want to convert it to meter, that will be 6.4 times 10 raised to minus 3 meters squared. Then you can calculate your C. For the first one, which is air, you will have your C. Don't forget when we were dealing with, I want to show you where we mentioned, look at this. The last sentence here, where we say we're using V is equal to ED and C is equal to E epsilon, that is the permittivity of air times area divided by the separation distance D. So what we just do is just, we have that expression C, is equal to, for air now, permittivity of air times the area divided by D. And you know the permittivity is constant, 8.85 is a constant value, times 10 raised to minus 12, times the area you have calculated. Don't forget, we have calculated the area to be 6.4 times 10 raised to power minus 3 meters squared. Then divided by the separation. Don't forget, we have been told that the separation between them is what? 2 millimeter. If it is 2 millimeter, what will you do? 2 millimeter to meter. That is 2 times 10 raised to power minus 3 to meter. So put it there. If you do it correctly, you are going to have can you remember? It will be 28.3 picofarad. That is what you are going to have. P 10 raised to minus 12. Don't forget, we mentioned that it can be capacitance can be so small and it can be so large. The larger that we talked about is just less micro. I mean, we talk of farad, we talk of millifarad. That's too large. That's too large. But this you can have as capacitance as small as pico, 10 raised to minus 12. So if you do that, you get 28.3 picofarad. I want you to do the second one. If it is filled with glass, what will you have? It will be epsilon, but that one is not. Don't forget, you have, when it is 5, a constant 5 filled the space between them. So you multiply 5 by that of epsilon naught, that of 3 here. So I want you to do that. And I want someone to give me the answer. Let's do that and let someone give me the answer. I want someone to give me the answer. Have you done it? I want someone to give me the answer. Okay. What is the answer? I can see slide. What did you get? Don't forget the first one. We said is 28.3 picofarad. What is the second one? We can't see the slide, sir. Okay. Maybe I can dictate the question for you now. Let me dictate the question. But they said they are not seeing the slide. We can't see the question. Please. That's that. I mean, I think it's okay. I will dictate the question. I will dictate the question. I said the dimension, write it down now. If you can't see, at least you will be able to hear. The dimensions of the plate of a parallel plate capacitor are 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter, 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter. We are talking about dimension. And they are separated by a distance of 2 millimeter. And they are separated by a distance of 2 millimeter. Calculate the capacitance if the air is between the plates. So if the air between the plates is, you have to calculate the capacitance, and that is the one I've done for you. The second one is now calculate also the capacitance if a glass of dielectric constant 5 fill the spaces between the plates. So 5 times that of the free space that you have. 5 times that of the free space. So I said for you to calculate the first one is equal to, I said C is equal to epsilon naught A, that is area, times area divided by the separation between the plates, which is 2 millimeter. And I calculate that one. I said just put the dielectric 8.85 times 10 raised to minus 12. That is your epsilon naught times the area you have calculated up, 8 by 8, that's 64. But don't forget 64 will be in centimeter squared. Convert it to meter. It will be 6.4 times 10 raised to power minus 3 meter cube. So multiply by that area divided by the separation D. And don't forget your D is what? 2 millimeter. And I said meter can now be converted to meter. That will be 2 times 10 raised to power minus 2. So 2 times 10 raised to power minus 2 by minus 3. And I said if you calculate that one correctly, you will get 28.3 picofarad. That is 28.3 times 10 raised to minus 12 farad. And I said calculate the second one. He said calculate the capacitance if a glass, instead of free air now, of that electric that is 5 times filled of that of air. So you just multiply by 5. That is 5 times that of the free air times that. So multiply the value that you have. 20, that's what you will the answer. 28.3 picofarad. And if you do that correctly, it will be 141.5 picofarad. farad. If you multiply it correctly, that's what we have. Yes. I said, you said you did not see this slide. What is happening? They said they are not seeing this slide. The third question, but before the third question, I want to give you the second code so that you can write the second code. The second attendant, I want you to write it. ZA, don't forget they are capital letter. ZA 8Y2. ZA 8Y2. They are capital letter. ZA 8Y2 is shared now. Okay, that's good. So the third question, it is shared. You should be able to see this. Okay. So they should be able to see now. No, this one here. I hope you are able to see that now. I hope you are able to see. I want you to, the third question. I want you to calculate C5 before you can calculate this one. You know, you have C1, C2, C3, C4. C5, let me give you what I want your C5 to be. The combination of C1 and C2 is your C5. I want you to give me what will be your C5. I want you to, what will be your C5? I'm expecting you to give me answer. If you do it correctly, my C5 will be 30 microfarad. And how did we get 30? C1 plus C2. Your C1 is 10 and your C2 is 20. But because they are in parallel, you had. That's C1 plus C2. And that's how we got 30. So if C1 plus C2 will give us an equivalent of C5, which will now be in series with C3. So I want you to get C6 now. C6 will now be combination of C3 and your C5. Can you do that? I think you should be able to do that. Since they are now in series, what will you do? It is inverse. 1 over C3 plus 1 over C5. And if you do that correctly, 1 over C3 is what? C3 is 15. 1 over 15 plus 1 over 30. Don't forget, your C5 is 30. So if you do that correctly, 1 over C6, which is the combination of C3 and C5, will give us 1 over 10, because 1 over 15 plus 1 over 30. Find the LCM the way we used to do in primary school. So I'm using primary school for you to know that, to let you know that this is no more secondary school work, the way we are doing it. So 1 over 30, then 15, you say 2, put 2 up, then the other one, 30 over 30, 1, you said 2 plus 1, 3. So 3 over 30, that will be 1 over 10. So 1 over C5 is equal to 1 over 10. My C5 will be 10. My C6 will be 10. So once you are able to get C and C6, which is 30 and 15, then you can also combine with C4. We want to get the equivalent value. So C4 will now be, C4 and C6 will now be in parallel. And what is my C4? My C4 is what? 25. That will be 25 plus C4, I mean C5, I mean C6, it will be C6 plus 10. Abi, we know that our C4 is 25. Our C6 is 10. So by the time you combine the two, that will be what? 35. So my final equivalent capacitance in this arrangement will just be equal to 35 microfarad. That will be the total capacitance in the circuit. It will be 35. So how do I calculate the charge? Since they are now in parallel, don't forget we said the charge, the equivalent charge, you will just add it together. That is 30 C equivalent times the voltage. And if you was the C equivalent, which is 35 times 10 raised to minus 6 times 30, I mean 60, which is the volt, that will give us, if you do it correctly, that will be equal to 0.6 times 10 raised to minus 3 coulomb. I want you to calculate the charge now. Calculate the charge. Look at what he said. Calculate the charge of 15 microfarad. Which one is 15? That is C3. So I want someone to help me. How do we get the equivalent? That is, if I want you to solve it for me. How do I get the equivalent charge on the equivalent charge on C15? On, yes, 15 microfarad, which is C3. Anybody there? Please. Sorry. Anybody there? What will be our charge, the equivalent charge? I want to see whether you are getting it. I don't want. Please, people are getting it. But the last, okay, you are asking for the first code. You came late. I mentioned it. You are asking for the second code. I've sent it now. But my most important thing, I want you to calculate the equivalent charge. I want you to give me what is the equivalent charge the equivalent charge on C3. If you look at C3 and your C5, I said they are parallel. If they are parallel, so what do you do? What do you do? If they are parallel, then the charge are the same. So if they are the same, then you can see that your C3 will be what? Your C3 will be what? You are not responding. Many of you are not responding. So if you do it correctly, I said, let me give you this. It should be the same 0.6. No. I'm not asking for the charge. I mean, for the C. I'm asking for the charge, the equivalent charge across C3. And I said C3 and C5 they are series. So if they are series, the voltage is the one you are adding, the charge are the same. So I said, but C was obtained by combining C3 and C5 in series. Yes, C3 and C5 must accumulate the same charge as their equivalent to C5, C6. So across C3 now, which is 15 microfarad, it will be the same. They have the same charge. Q3 will be equal to 0.6 times 10 raised to power minus 3 coulomb. It should be opened. Is that okay? Yes. I need this. So that will be your what I want you to do. And though we have done it, are there questions? Do we have questions? So I will like you to do. Let me give you this. I want you to write it down. Are you hearing me? It's the one we have done, but I will change the value. I want to see whether you know what we are doing. A 5 microfarad and a 6 microfarad capacitor are connected in series. A 1,000 volt supply line. A 1,000 supply line. Find the charge on each capacitor. Find the charge on each capacitor. Okay. Let me repeat the question. And the voltage across each. Let me repeat. A 5 microfarad and a 6 microfarad capacitor are connected in series across a 1,000 volt supply line. Find the charge on each capacitor and the voltage across each. I want you to do that. I want you to do it. Is anybody there? Is anybody attempting it? I want you to give me answer. Off edge. Just don't. I don't want you to. I want you to give me answer. I don't want us to just go over it. I mean, just go like that without solving it. I want people to give me answer. Are you doing something? First of all, you find, because they are in series, you find the combination. After getting the combination, then you can get the total charge, the equivalent charge. Once you get the equivalent charge, you can get the voltage across 5 microfarad, and you can get the voltage across 6 microfarad. Are you doing something? I want you to write the last code. Listen very well now. The last code. CH, capital letter, CHQ, DM, all capital letter. CHQ, DM. CHQ, DM. Please. Sorry, I'm disturbing you. I want to see whether they are responding. Okay. I can see it. Some are responding. Yes. Yes, the one I send up, the one that is written up, that's the code. Yes. Only few are doing it. Only few. I can see that many are not sending. They are not sending. I don't see. Okay, yes. Keep on. Let me see as many that will get it, that is getting it. I said the code. You are saying as you arrange the code. I think you should get the code. I said CHQDM, and somebody has helped to type it. It's there. That's it. It's correct. You can keep on doing that. Keep on sending it. Keep on sending it. Keep on sending it. You have not done the second one. You have gotten the queue. What about the footage? Only one person got the footage. Yes. I've sent the third code. Oyinda Mola Aluko. I've sent it's not assembling the code, Ke. Okay, you want me to? Okay. The first code is U9W4P. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Daniel. Daniel Monday, you have done well. Yes, that's the first code now. Thank you. It's accepting it. Maybe it's you that you came late. The portal is not accepting response. It's because you didn't log in at the right time. That was why. You didn't log in at the right time. It's only the third code that it will accept from you. It will not accept the first code. Yes, it's CHQDM. That is it. Well, I think it's not the phone. It's the same phone. Well, that was what I was giving. No, not the form isn't open. I can't say. I don't know. Is it D or is it P or M? What do you mean? It's D. The form is no more accepting attendance. It should attend the third one. Hello? Say the third code. The third code here. Is it correct? There is no value. But they are having problem with it. Some are saying the form isn't open. Some saying that it's not accepting it. They said the third code is not accepting. Because there is no let number there in it, unlike others. Okay. Okay, the form wasn't even open right from when the first. Okay. The ICT didn't open.
I think the Kenyan schedule is a general.
It's a general. Okay.
They should just leave it for today.
Okay. So some of it's not open.
It's a general.
Well, I could bear that. The fault is not from your side. Don't worry. Hello? Yes. No, it's not your problem. I've confirmed from the ICT here. They said they have challenge with the attendance. So it's not their problem. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So don't worry if you are not picking, if your code is not, if it's not going, if it's not accepting your code, don't worry. I think they are doing something about. Let's accept it like this today. But I want to pass this information across to you. Please, you are going to have your tutorial question from the booklet. So go and get your booklet. Go and get it The man will send it before the end of this week. So you are going to get your tutorial, the first tutorial that you have to submit. He's going to send it. So please, that is because of what we are going through. That is going to be the end of our class today. So thank you very much. See you next time. See you next on Friday. Yes, see you on Friday. Thank you. I want to leave. See.